I hate our tiny house. I said it. I feel better now. Welcome back to Once Upon a Tiny Farm. My name's Drew, and when I first started this channel, I talked a lot about our tiny house. In fact, the channel was, at that point, all about our tiny house. And I looked back at our very first video, and a lot of the things and goals that I mentioned in that video, we actually are living and bringing to reality today. We wanted to live a simple, debt-free life. We wanted to grow more of our own food. At that point, I wasn't even planning on selling our food that we were growing at the market, but we are now doing that. So we're making money on our small property. We're living as debt-free, minimalist as possible. And living in a tiny house was our vehicle to live that kind of lifestyle. The main reason my wife and I went so all in on the tiny house lifestyle is because we decided early on in our marriage, our relationship, we didn't want to live our lives stuck to jobs that we hated just to make money to pay for things, buy things that we really don't need. That seemed like a waste of our time, and by living in a tiny house and needing less, not having to make as much money, needing less things, you get that time back. And time is something I think a lot of people would agree is more valuable than money. You can't get that back. Our time here on Earth is finite, and you don't want to waste it living a life that you don't love. So we've lived in our tiny house since February of 2017. And like I just mentioned, we really loved our tiny house and what we were doing and why. But now the tiny house just doesn't work for us anymore. We were in a much different place in our lives back then when we decided to live tiny, and a lot of things have changed. But we still desire to live a simple, debt-free life. We made a lot of compromises with our tiny house build, and we're at a point in our life that we want to make our lives more comfortable, and we now know exactly what we need. I'm really happy that the tiny house has allowed us to do those things. However, life has become a lot more difficult and stressful because of the confines of this tiny space. And in this video, I want to talk about 10 reasons I hate our tiny house. All right, so let's get into my top 10 list of things I hate about my tiny house. Number one, it's always cluttered. So we ended up accruing much more stuff than we actually had space for in our tiny house. And that happened very, very quickly. More quickly after the birth of our first child, our daughter, Lucy. She came in December of 2017. So after she came, we needed a lot more things. We needed a crib. We needed, she had a lot of toys and things to, that babies need, and they take up space. And as much as we tried to move things around and make changes to our couch and this and that, it just, no matter what we did, things just ended up cluttered. If we cleaned something 1 second, a couple minutes later it was cluttered again. So it's just very frustrating. It makes me very anxious when I see things now get so cluttered. It's just like out of control thing. I don't know, but it's very frustrating to me how the house always looks cluttered. No matter how hard we try to clean, it gets dirty and cluttered again very, very fast. All right, on to point number two. What I hate about our tiny house is there's not enough natural light. We didn't get enough windows in our tiny house. There's one window behind me. It's kind of small, and they're all the same size. We don't have a window on this wall of the house. So we only have windows on one end of the house. I really wish we had a window here so that we could have nice airflow going through our house, but we don't have that. We don't have the good airflow, and we don't have enough windows. I wish our windows were larger. I wish we had a lot more of them, because when you only have a few windows, especially like in the middle of like winter and stuff, where you're already getting less sunlight and warmth, things like that. It's just makes you sometimes feel like you're in a coffin. It's so dark. It's not bright. It's just not good. I mean, if we had more windows, it would be easier to at least trick our brains into thinking this space was bigger than it is, or maybe make you feel like not so bad about living in such a small space when you have big open windows that you could see the outside very easily. But without those things, it does feel very small at times. And like I just mentioned in the last point, when it gets cluttered, it just feels like your world is just closing in on you. The walls are closing in, and it can get very, very frustrating and doesn't help with my anxiety and things like that. So yeah, if we could do the tiny house build over again, I would definitely get bigger windows and more of them. All right, on to point number 3, why I hate my tiny house. It's not big enough for our family. I know, shocker, right? But when we first bought our tiny house, our plan was to only have one child. Well, that obviously changed. We now have 2 kids, and our family is now complete. We're not planning on having any more children, but our plan was at first to have our bedroom be downstairs in a Murphy bed. So we had a couch over here on this side of the house that was a built-in couch, a storage couch. So we were storing all of our clothes. It lifted up and we stored all our clothes in there. We could store a ton of things in there. And there was a Murphy bed on this back wall here that we could pull down to sleep when it was our time to, go to bed. We could change the couch to a bed, and that was custom built for us. And that was our bedroom. Our idea was that, and our daughter Lucy was going to have the loft as her bedroom, which we thought would be really cool. She loves the loft. But what happened was, when my wife Stephanie was pregnant, we quickly realized that it was a big hassle to lift our Murphy bed up and down. And the way that it was built was all out of big, heavy wood pieces. And she, like, if I wasn't there, she wasn't able to lift it up and down, especially when she was pregnant. And we eventually just got sick of our Murphy bed design, became more of a hassle. We thought it would make our lives easier. We didn't like it, so we actually ripped that out of the wall, and we lost our bedroom that we planned to have in our tiny house. We had our house custom built for us, and that was the design that we thought would work. It ended up not working. We ripped that all out of the wall, and we ended up getting we tried a couple different couches. We ended up liking this one the best. So yeah, we basically lost our private space for our bedroom that we were going to have, and now we all sleep up in the loft. That's a bedroom that we share, all of us together. It's only like a 10 by 12, well, I guess it's actually like 8 by 12 feet long, and we all just sleep up there. And now, like I mentioned, we have another child. We have 2 kids up there now, and our bed, and it's just, we don't have our own private space for my wife and I, and that's something that we would like to have again. Living in or sleeping upstairs in the loft is kind of cool, but when you think about it, it's just, we all have a bedroom that we share, and you can't even stand in it, so it gets old kind of quickly. All right, reason number 4 why I hate my tiny house is our plumbing sucks. The way that our tiny house was built is, well, I guess it has to be this way. I don't know anything about plumbing. All of our pipes go out the same direction, whatever. Something happened when we had our tiny house delivered. Some of the pipes got like knocked loose when they were trying to put it into place. And then we had to hire a company to come and connect our plumbing. We are connected to the sewer lines and stuff like that. We're not like off-grid or anything like that. so we still have a flushing toilet and things like that. And the company that came to connect our plumbing said all of our plumbing was facing the wrong direction, or for some reason, like they hadn't ever seen plumbing done in the way or the direction that it was for this house. And they said that all of our pipes were going to freeze. And we were a lot younger back then, and we just naive, and we didn't even like think that, you know, something might be wrong. What we found out is our tiny house builder put our plumbing and everything together in a way that would work for this tiny house, and the company, the plumbing people that we hired, had never seen it like that, and they just said that it was wrong, I guess, compared to like a normal house build where they would have their pipes positioned. And we ended up letting the plumbing people fix everything, and then I think they ended up, something went wrong when they changed the direction of our pipes, and now the plumbing doesn't work always the right way. Sometimes when we're using the laundry machine, it suctions like water, like we can't flush our toilet. And sometimes we end up, the toilet won't flush because there's water backed up in the line or something, and we end up plunging our shower to make our toilet flush. It's like this all the time. Sometimes everything works fine, and sometimes every time we flush the toilet, like we have to plunge the shower to make it flush. And yeah, it's not always fun, and I think that was just a mistake we made by there's more to that story, because we had some issues with our builder for our tiny house, and we just assumed that everything he did was wrong. But I think he did things the way that they were supposed to be, with at least with regards to our plumbing, and then we trusted these plumbers to fix the problem, and they actually made everything worse, because they didn't know what they were doing. They never seen anything like a tiny house and tiny house plumbing. So yeah, our plumbing kind of sucks, and yeah, it's not always fun. All right, now we're on to reason number 5 I hate my tiny house is we just compromised too much on what we ended up getting as our final product. We made way too many compromises in our tiny house build. At the time, we were younger. We didn't have a lot of money. We still don't have a lot of money. But we really just wanted to get off on our own and have our own space. And in order to do that, we made compromises in the size of the house that we wanted. We wish our trailer for our tiny house is 26 feet long. Ideally, we would have picked something like 32 feet, would have allowed us to add a small bedroom just for us. And another thing we wanted to do was have 2 lofts. 2 lofts would have made our lives so much easier, especially now with 2 kids. 1 kid could get each loft as a bedroom, and then we could have had that extra space on the first floor as a small bedroom for us. That would have been perfect for the tiny house. Maybe a tiny house would have still been too small, but that would have made our lives a lot easier. But we couldn't afford that. That all would have cost several $1,000s more than we had, and we were trying to build our house and have it built for what we could afford at the time, and we didn't want to take out any big loans in order to pay for this. That would have defeated the purpose of living in a tiny house. So we made some compromises, and if we could do it all over again, I don't know if we would have picked a tiny house, because my wife and I always loved the idea of living in a cabin. Specifically, an A-frame cabin would have been the perfect kind of small home setup. But again, that's the choices we made, and now we're looking to find ways to fix it. All right, reason number 6 I hate my tiny house is we're not off grid here. And I guess I can't blame the tiny house for that. My wife and I, we've always wanted to live off the grid. It was one of our very first conversations when we first started dating. We both talked about how much we wanted to live in a cabin in the woods, and how cool it would be to live off grid and just be able to, get our own water, have our own power, all of these things. And that was actually our original goal with our tiny house. We even bought a composting toilet that we were going to have permanently in our tiny house. And then things changed after we found this property that already had electric hookups, that already had sewer and water hookups. We decided to scrap all that and just connect this house to the grid to make our lives easier. We also had to apply for a variance to legally park our tiny house here on this property with our county, and we got the variance approved, but we didn't want to push too many buttons like with local officers, people we didn't know. Like, we didn't want to make a big scene as new residents here, and now I just don't care, and I want to do what I want and live the life that I think that would benefit our family the most. And I think that living off grid would be super amazing for not just me but my kids to see what it's like to work and earn everything that you get and not expect the lights to just magically turn on, to know where our power comes from, know where our water comes from, know where your heat comes from. And yeah, that's something that I wish we were doing right now, but I'm going to talk about in maybe one of the upcoming videos some plans that we have that are very exciting, that we're going to start moving in that direction to start living more off-grid, and we have some plans for that, so stay tuned for more. All right, reason number 7 I hate my tiny house is we don't have room for a full table. We don't have room for a dining table that we could just leave open all the time to sit as a family and eat our meals. And that was something that wasn't that important to me when I was younger, but now that I'm getting older, I realize that it's more important for our family to always sit down as a family and eat dinner and talk about things that are going on in our lives. And what we've always done is, first we had an IKEA table that was a folding table that had a leaf that we could open up to eat when it was time for a meal or whatever we needed a table for. But we didn't always keep the table leaf open because it took up space in the middle of our walkway to get through our house. And in time, it just became a hassle to always open and close the table, kind of like our Murphy bed became a hassle to always open and close the bed when you needed it. So we ended up getting rid of that bed. I actually made a table that was just a smaller table, might have been like 2 by 4 feet or something like that. Not very deep. And that worked a little bit, but we ended up getting rid of that. I don't even remember why. It just didn't work out for the space. Now we have another table that is more of a half circle that also has a leaf. And this one actually fits the best in our house of all the tables that we've had. However, it's only a half circle and we can't sit our entire family at the table now. A half circle table is too small. So that's something that I wish we had space for, was a table that we could all sit and eat together. Maybe something like if we had a bar type seating along one of the walls in the middle of the house, that would make more sense for our tiny house space. But it would just be nice to have a table that we could all sit around and eat and talk every night for our meals. So that's something I'm looking to get in the future in a larger space. Okay, reason number 8 I hate my tiny house is we had a very bad experience with our builder. I'm not going to mention who it is or what company. I don't even know if he still is building tiny houses, but at the time it was a very, very stressful experience for us. Kind of gives my wife and I, well, at least for me, a little bit of PTSD at the time. We made a bunch of payments to this man, this company. We found him on TV. He was on some tiny house building shows when they were more popular a couple of years ago, and we contacted him about making us a custom tiny house. And when the time period that we made kind of like a handshake agreement on when the house would be ready, and as the time got closer and closer to that time where we were expecting to get our tiny house, we weren't getting any updates on it. We weren't seeing any pictures, and we were wondering, like, at some points, like, did he just like take our money and run? Like, is there a tiny house at all? Like, had he started the building process? Because we had already bought this property. We had already got the zoning approval to put our tiny house here, but we didn't have the tiny house, and we had paid him to build our tiny house, but we couldn't even see it. And there were a couple weird times where he said it was going to be delivered, and he left us some weird messages like, oh, my driver got into an accident, and the trailer got messed up, and I had to bring it back to repair it, and the driver got fired, and this and that. And it was just like it could have probably, it's possible that something like that happened, but like, my instincts told me that something funny was going on, and like, we were being lied to. So my wife and I got tired of it. We got all the email correspondence that we had with this guy together, and we were ready to like report this guy to some kind of authorities. We don't know what we were going to do. We drove down to Arkansas, where his building site and company was, and all the way from Pennsylvania. It took a long time, and Arkansas was beautiful. It was a beautiful drive. It turns out we pulled in to his site, and there was our tiny house. He was still working on it, painting it as we pulled in. And it was just like a funny kind of experience. Ever since then, like, I really don't trust anyone to do like anything. I kind of lost trust and like faith in people. I'm glad that our tiny house was there. Like, we thought we were getting scammed, and luckily we weren't. Time must move a little bit slower down in Arkansas. I don't know. But that whole experience just changed me, the way I look at people and the world. And in some ways, I'm grateful for that. But yeah, it wasn't a great experience. And that kind of hangs over everything else with our tiny house. It wasn't like a smooth experience, and I wish it was, but I guess there's nothing I could do about it now. It's just something we went through, but it leaves a stain on like the legacy of the house or something like that. And I wish we had picked a different builder, or I wish we just figured out a way to build it ourselves, but I didn't have the confidence to do that at the time. Now I do a little bit more, but I still wouldn't have the confidence to really build a whole house by myself. But it just, I learned that you can't really trust people to do what they say they're gonna do. All right, on to reason number 9 I hate my tiny house, and that is our water heater is very small. I think we have a 12-gallon water heater. It's like this tall. It sits underneath one of the cabinets under the countertops in the kitchen, and it makes sense, I guess, for our space limitations. But the problem is, now that we have a larger family, you can take a 7-8 minute shower, and then the water is not hot anymore. It gets cold. And then you have to wait another 30-40 minutes for the water to heat back up, and then somebody else can take a shower. If somebody is doing dishes with hot water, you have to wait longer to have water that's warm for the shower. You have to wait another 30-40 minutes. So you just kind of have to plan your life around that. If we could do things over again, we would replace it with an instant hot water heater. But I don't really want to replace it. I don't want to hire someone to do it. Just something that I wish we had. But it is what it is. It's just another limitation of the tiny house. All right, reason number 10 that I hate my tiny house is one that seems like a small complaint, but it actually makes a big difference if we had done this a different way. And that is the way that our door swings when you open it. It opens into our tiny house instead of opening outside of the tiny house. Because the space is so small, every time the door opens into the house, it's like in the living room. It's taking up space. And if it's something we didn't even think about as something that we might have wanted when we were having the tiny house built for us, that we wanted the door to open to the outside. If we had done that, it just would have made the house feel more open. It would be easier to leave like the front door open. Like we have a storm door on it now, it would just act as like another window basically with the screen on the storm door. But the way that it is now with the door opening in, it just really encroaches on our living space, which is already small, and it just would make a huge difference if it just opened outside. So in the future, in a different tiny house, small cabin, that's something I would recommend to anybody who is trying to make their own small house built for them. Make sure your door opens to the outside, not inside. Don't take up more space than you have to if you already have a small space. Alright guys, that's it. I just had to get all of that off my chest. I feel a lot better now. Thank you for watching. If you found this video entertaining, informative in any way, give this video a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to our channel if you're new here. I'd really appreciate that too. Alright guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.